When my phone rang at 4:10 on Thursday, I knew what the message would say, but I looked at it anyway. I saw that it was from my private investigator, Emerson Burke. Emerson Burke. She's been taken care of. My wife was Martha Harrington. In addition to being a wife, mother, sister, daughter, and friend, she was also a senior partner at Willington & Compton, a prestigious law firm in Hartford. Martha's responsibilities as a senior partner included managing the affairs of 7 junior partners. She held 2 mandatory meetings a week for the junior partners, on Monday at 10 in the morning and on Thursday after lunch at 4. Every meeting started right on time. Anyone who was late felt Martha's wrath throughout the entire meeting. The sheriff who delivered the divorce papers to Martha interrupted the meeting on Thursday at 4:02 and did as he was instructed. "Mrs. Harrington, your husband wants a divorce. You have been officially served." After 23 years of marriage, I knew my wife well. She was utterly humiliated after being served in front of her subordinates. Despite the anger that engulfed Martha, she did not rush home. Instead, she locked herself in her office and began to review every word of the divorce papers as only an experienced lawyer could. I knew that a first reading of the documents would not provide my wife with all the answers she sought. As the reason for the divorce, I cited the classic irreconcilable differences. Martha breathed a sigh of relief when she read that marital infidelity was not listed as the reason for the divorce. She suspected that I knew something about her long-term affair with Michael Kinsley, a married 29-year-old employee of the firm. As for property, we would split the proceeds from the sale of our 7,300-square-foot house and our summer home on the Connecticut River. Martha would keep her pension, and I would keep mine. Bank and checking accounts would be divided after all debts were paid. We each earned enough money, so there was no need for alimony. What confused her when she got to the end of the legal documents was that a very successful engineering firm, which had been in our family for 3 generations, was not listed as an asset. Martha knew my divorce lawyer by reputation and had recommended her to several friends who needed this kind of service. Over the years, she had said many times that my lawyer was a shark, so she was surprised that someone so respected in legal circles could be so careless as to not mention the business. I knew she would suspect something was wrong, but she would be at a loss as to what it was. Martha reread the documents in detail to make sure that Michael Kinsley, her sex buddy, was not mentioned in them. She then called an emergency meeting of her most trusted partners and associates. They all looked through the papers and together came up with an initial plan to deal with her cuckold husband. Me. What my life was like before. My name is Chris Harrington. I met Martha at the University of Connecticut. She was a sophomore in law school, and I was finishing my doctoral dissertation in mechanical engineering. We started dating a week after we met and quickly became a couple. On our 3rd date, after a delicious dinner at a restaurant, as we were walking to the car, Martha suggested, "Chris, invite me to your apartment and I'll get naked for you." We had fun and kissed until the end of the weekend. Our sex life was fantastic. "Chris, invite me to your apartment and I'll take my clothes off for you." We had fun and kissed until the end of the weekend. Our sex life was fantastic. We both agreed that we would never include others in our sex life and would remain an exclusive couple. We officially confirmed our vows to each other when we pledged to love, honor, cherish, and remain faithful to each other at our wedding, which took place 2 weeks after we both received our degrees. Our wedding was quite large. It took place in Martha's hometown of Portland, Maine. The reception at the wedding venue was held under tents on a warm, clear summer night on the rocky coast of Maine. We spent our honeymoon in Aruba and returned without any tan lines on our bodies. Martha applied to several law firms in Hartford before she finished school, and 2 weeks after we returned, she was offered a job in Willington and Compton. Over the next 2 decades, we fell deeper in love, raised 2 wonderful children, and balanced our careers and family life. I took over the reins of our family business and bought my father's shares when he retired 12 years ago. Martha became a junior partner at her law firm 7 years after she started working there and a senior partner in her 16th year. Life was great until the shit hit the fan. A little over 3 years ago, I received an anonymous letter at the office. The envelope was addressed to me with the words, "Personal and confidential," scribbled across the bottom. Inside the envelope was a folded sheet of notebook paper with the words, "Your wife is sleeping with Michael Kinsley," and a photo of Martha and Michael in the doorway of some motel. I hired a good private investigator, and within 2 months, I had enough evidence of Martha's infidelity. After another month of thinking, planning, and pretending to be a loving friend and devoted husband to Martha, I assembled my team. The team included my detective, a divorce lawyer, my business lawyer, and my personal accountant. I laid out what I wanted to do in the situation and explained to the group that it could take several years before everything worked out the way I wanted. Their job was to confirm at every step that my actions were legal and could not be used against me in a divorce. What happened to my life after that? The second message from my private investigator arrived at 10 minutes past 6 that same day. Emerson Burke, Michael Kinsley has been served. 2 weeks earlier, Emerson had met with Rachel Kinsley. He shared with her the results of a 3-year investigation and a huge amount of evidence of an affair between my wife and her husband. The detective recommended my divorce lawyer, who was happy to take on her case. I realized that all the plans Martha's group in Willington and Compton had devised to fight my divorce petition had been rejected because Michael's wife had cited spousal infidelity as the reason for the divorce. Her divorce petition included a detective's report, photographs, and video footage. It was a very solid package of evidence. The garage door of our house rattled at 10 minutes past 8 in the evening. 4 hours had passed since Martha had been served, and I silently wondered if her military counsel would outmaneuver my 3 years of planning. I sat at the head of our 10-person dining table. The second chair was placed at the opposite end, and I had removed the other 8 chairs to the basement. I poured Martha a glass of her favorite red wine and placed it on the table in front of her. When I heard the door from the garage open and Martha call out to me, I took my first sip of slightly chilled bourbon. The click of women's heels on the floor told me that she had first looked into the master bedroom, then into my study, and finally into the living room before I saw her in the kitchen doorway. Martha looked at me intently, then surveyed the entire kitchen and walked over to the chair at the far end of the table. Sitting down, she reached for the glass, thanked me for the wine, and took a big sip. Several minutes passed before she spoke. "I don't want a divorce." "I know, but I don't want a whore for a wife." "Chris, please, let's talk like adults. Yes, I had an affair, but I'm not a whore," I replied. "I'd bet that in the years we've been married, you've told me 50 times that only a whore would cheat on me. Those are your words, Martha." I could see that Martha was ready to pounce on me, but she held back. Her face flushed, and she began to breathe heavily. I watched silently as she slowly calmed down. "Why did you have to destroy Michael's family? He has 2 wonderful children who will now grow up without a father." I had to stifle a laugh, shake my head, and reply calmly, "Did you see Rachel Kinsley? She was knocked out, but she got back up. Her children will soon have a new father, and I'm guessing he won't be as unfaithful a jerk as your plaything." I paused for a moment, then continued. "Why should I give a damn about that piece of shit's family? He didn't give a damn about anything concerning my family. Except you." Martha clenched her jaw and hissed, "I'm going to ask you nicely to speak to me like an adult. Your vulgar language isn't going to help." I broke into a smile that I knew unnerved her. "Martha, I'm not trying to help the situation. If you don't like my language, you can get up and leave. I swear to God, I won't stop you." Martha didn't move, and I knew she wouldn't. "How long have you known?" Instead of answering her question, I looked at the papers I had laid out in front of me before Martha arrived. I picked up a copy of the anonymous letter that had been delivered to my office and pushed it across the table. Martha took out the short letter and the photograph. After looking at them, she looked at the front of the envelope and read the postmark. 3 years? You've known for 3 years and you haven't done anything? I smiled wryly. Believe me, I've done a lot, Martha. You had a 4-hour meeting at work today to prepare for this conversation. I've had 3 years to prepare. When I finished my last sentence, I saw a shadow of concern cross Martha's face, but I didn't want to delve into the subject just yet. For example, we haven't had sex since I found out about this. Except for a kiss on the cheek, we hardly ever have any intimate contact. It's been 3 years since we last hugged each other tenderly and you didn't even notice. I thought you lost interest in sex. This comment made me laugh from the bottom of my heart. I just lost interest in sex with you. Martha thought for a couple of seconds. You haven't had sex in 3 years? I smiled from ear to ear. I haven't had sex in 3 years. With you. I've had all the sex I wanted. Leaning back in her chair, Martha sat there staring at me in shock. Meanwhile, I continued. The difference between us is that I have proof. Photos and videos. You don't have the same proof against me. Chris, I love you and I always have. The time I spent with Michael meant nothing. It was just a way to relieve stress, especially after you stopped having sex with me. Don't start, Martha. Your 3-year weekly affair is your fault. Don't you dare blame me. It took her a full minute to calm down, and then she continued. No matter what, I love you, and I know you love me. You're wrong, Martha. For 3 years, you've been lying to me. You broke our wedding vows and cheated on me. You humiliated me in the worst possible way. It took some time for the love to fade, but I don't love you anymore. In fact, I don't even like you anymore. The tears that Martha had been holding back all this time poured from her eyes. She jumped to her feet and ran out of the room. I didn't follow her, knowing she would be back soon, and most likely back in attack mode. I was right. Before returning, Martha changed into jeans and a blouse. She sat down and filled her glass from the bottle of wine I had left on her side of the table. Chris, I think we really need to rethink everything. I have a great team at the office, and with an outside divorce lawyer, you're going to lose a lot. I know Sharon Brown, Sharon was my lawyer, is a good lawyer, but I've already found several glaring errors in the petition she prepared. If we can't come to some kind of decision about how we can move forward, I'll set my team on you. My smiles were clearly having an effect on Martha. I smiled broadly again. The difference between your team and my team is that your team didn't exist this morning. My team has been slowly and methodically executing my plan for the past 3 years. Your team will only start the war tomorrow, and my team's work is already done. I let that sink into Martha's brain before continuing. I'm taking you at your word that you love me. I don't know how that's even possible after 3 years of deception, but I'll take your I love you. I can practically guarantee that by the time we divorce, you'll hate me with every fiber of your being. The funny thing is, everything you'll hate me for has already happened. You just don't know it yet. You'll never turn our children against me, Martha shouted. Calm down. I would never try to turn the children against you. In fact, I haven't even talked to our children yet. I want to call them on the weekend. And their parents and all their brothers and sisters. I'm going to tell them that I filed for divorce because of your long affair. I'll tell the kids and my family that I want them to treat you with respect, and I hope they continue their relationship with you. But that's entirely up to them. If anyone doesn't believe the depth of your betrayal, I'll offer to share the detective's report. I suspect you won't want them to see it, so you might as well just admit to your infidelity. Martha hated to lose. She began to realize that with every verbal salvo I fired, she was falling further and further behind, but instead of backing down, she exploded. I'm going to take your fucking company away from you. Now began the first, material half of my plan to destroy Martha. She expected that the threat to my firm would be her ace in the hole, but instead I directed her attack against herself. My company? What kind of company is that? She looked at me as if I had grown two heads and sneered, "Precision engineering. I'm taking it for myself." My smirk lasted for a while. In fact, she screamed before I could respond. "What? What are you laughing at?" I spoke in the most condescending voice I could muster. "Honey, don't you remember? 2 years ago, we sold this company to the Swedes." "What? That's illegal. That's illegal. The company is a family asset, and I didn't agree to sell it." "I didn't say you agreed to sell it. Nevertheless, you gave me power of attorney for everything related to the company. In fact, the document was issued to me by your firm. I used the power of attorney to make the sale and invest the money in foreign accounts. Every year, you personally signed our family tax documents, which clearly state the sale and movement of money. Good luck finding that money 2 years later." Martha was stunned. She sat there, her mouth moving like a fish blowing bubbles. I got up, left the room, and went upstairs to the guest room. Locking the door, I stripped down to my underwear, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally cried. The next morning, at 3 o'clock, the alarm clock rang. I got out of bed, took a shower, and headed to the airport to fly to Florida. Preparing for bachelorhood, I bought an apartment on Clearwater Beach, across the bay from Tampa. On that fateful evening, I shook Martha. As I expected, it took Martha and her team of lawyers several weeks to review the legal documents and financial statements before they realized that approximately $34 million from the sale of the company was no longer under the jurisdiction of a U.S. bank and therefore would not be included in the divorce settlement. Yes, it was a real shock for her. Judging by family traditions throughout our married life, the religious spiritual part of my plan was supposed to work in 5 weeks, on the Friday after Thanksgiving. Black Friday. As a child, Martha was very close to Edith, her maternal grandmother. Edith always arranged weekly outings just for the two of them. Decades later, Martha took the initiative in their relationship. In recent years, Martha had been traveling to Portland, Maine, at least once a month to visit her grandmother and take her out of the nursing home for a short time. They would have lunch together and, as long as Edith's health permitted, go to the mall. A family tradition started by Edith and continued by Martha for the past 15 years was that a nearly 175-year-old family nativity scene, passed down to Martha, was always displayed in the house at Christmas. Every year, on the Friday after Thanksgiving, Martha would go to the local bank and take out 24 figurines from a very large safe which made up the Christmas scene. Each figurine was individually wrapped in a velvet box. My children and I would go outside and gather 2 12-foot Christmas trees, 3 meters, 66 centimeters. It took our family a whole day to decorate the house. The highlight of the decorations was the nativity scene, with a table covered in straw in the center placed between the 2 trees. 3 rows of flowers were placed in front of the table to protect the incredibly valuable figurines from the wandering hands of our guests. When everything was ready, Martha would stand in front of her favorite nativity scene, and tears would inevitably roll down her cheeks. During the holiday season, Martha cried every time she looked at this scene. She once confessed to me that it was her happy place and reminded her of all the joys in her life. The scene filled her with memories of the past. We left the decorations in place until it was time to return to work after the holiday season. On that day, the whole family took down and put away the decorations. Martha gently packed each figurine and placed the boxes on the kitchen table. The next day, on her way to work, she stopped by the bank and put the boxes back in the safe deposit box for safekeeping until they were needed again next year. Most of my plan to divorce Martha didn't require the past 3 years. All but one element was completed within the first year. For the last 3 years, I planned my business trips for the beginning of the new year. Martha knew that my flight usually didn't leave until around noon, so instead of going to the office, I started my day in my home office. For the first 2 years, Martha and I had breakfast together on the first workday after the Christmas holidays. Then I helped her carry the boxes of figurines to the car. She wished me all the best, kissed me on the cheek, and drove to the bank, and then to work. This year, finally, circumstances turned out the way I had been hoping for more than 2 years. As we were getting dressed, Martha asked me, "Chris, can you do me a favor?" I looked at her and replied, "Sure. I have a lot of work to do this morning. Would you have time to drop the figurines off at the bank before you head to the airport?" I thought for a second and smiled. "That'll be easy enough. I'll take care of it." As I had expected, Martha's message arrived shortly before noon on Friday, right after Thanksgiving. "Martha, where the hell are my figurines, asshole?" I laughed so hard that coffee shot out of my nose. At that moment, Kate, my 38-year-old divorced neighbor, walked out of my bedroom naked and saw the coffee spray. She laughed with me. When she found out what had happened, she asked a simple question. "Do you really need to respond to that message before I leave?" After she left, I checked my phone and found several more messages and missed calls from Martha, her family, and our children. Although I didn't want to talk to Martha, I decided it would be much easier to call her than to talk to everyone else. "What the hell took you so long to call back?" Martha hissed when she answered my call. "I was entertaining one of our neighbors. Since we already had sex this morning, it took a while. You remember how it is with us, right, Martha?" Martha paused to calm down and continued, "I want my nativity scene, and I want it now, immediately." "Of course, go to the bank and get it." "Chris, I know you didn't take the figurines to the bank. The last time the safe was accessed was when I took the figurines out last Christmas." Before she could continue, I asked, "Why didn't you return them this year?" "As you remember, you agreed to take them to the bank for me. Please, Chris, please, give me back my treasures." "I'm sorry, Martha, but you're mistaken. I remember putting the boxes in the trunk of your car before I left for work, just like I do almost every year. What are you trying to get out of me, Martha?" She sniffed. "Oh my God, why are you doing this to me? I know you're angry, but why are you being so awful to me? It's amazing that you refuse to take any responsibility for your fucking life. Goodbye, Martha." I ended the conversation and decided to call everyone who had called me that day. I called them with the same message. Martha is trying to cause problems for me as the court date approaches. I don't know if anyone believed me, but I was sure that no one had any proof that the figurines were in my possession. Our divorce was finalized 14 months after I filed. Martha fought me at every turn and put up roadblock after roadblock. She involved the police and insurance investigators in the disappearance of her nativity scene. My only comment on the matter was, as far as I remember, I put all 24 boxes of figurines in the trunk of Martha's car. I would have been surprised if any of them believed me, but they couldn't prove that I had taken Martha's family heirloom. Martha and I saw each other a few times at events our children attended. We were reserved with each other but tried to keep our distance. 14 years after our divorce, I learned that Martha had been battling an aggressive form of breast cancer. Martha's days were coming to an end, and our daughter called me and asked if I would like to visit her mother while there was still time. When I entered the hospice room the next day, Martha was asleep. I watched her for almost an hour. Several times I had to fight back tears as I wandered through the alleys of memory. I must have been deep in thought because I started when I heard her voice. "You know, you were right." I looked at the smiling face of my one true love and smiled back. "Of course. I was always right, but out of curiosity, what are you talking about?" Her faint smile flickered as she spoke. "You told me that my love for you would turn to hate by the end of our divorce. After all the terrible things I did to you and our family, I'm ashamed to admit it, but I hated you for a long time. Just like I did, Martha. Her smile returned and we laughed together. Chris, do you still hate me? I paused for a moment. Number hate takes too much energy. After a while, I didn't have the strength for it anymore. How about you? Martha began to nod in agreement before I had even finished my sentence. I agree. After a while, hatred isn't worth the effort. We talked for about 2 hours. I was finishing a very old story about when our children were little when I looked up and saw that Martha had fallen asleep. My first impulse was to leave, but I changed my mind when I realized that this was probably the last time I would see her alive. After sleeping for an hour, Martha woke up and we continued reminiscing. We were both laughing like fools when our son Brian entered the room, followed by his wife Sue and our 3 grandchildren. I could tell right away that Brian was happy that I had come to visit his mother. I didn't stay long because I wanted Brian and his family to have Martha's undivided attention. I said goodbye and kissed Martha tenderly on the lips. Then I turned to leave, but Martha called after me. Chris, can I ask you a favor? After I nodded briefly in agreement, Martha looked at Brian. Give your father and me a minute. Brian and Sue gathered their children and left. When we were alone, Martha continued. I would like Brian's family and Rose's family to take turns performing the Christmas scene. Do you think that would be possible? Could you help make it happen? Black Friday 2018. While many families spent the Friday after Thanksgiving looking for bargains at the local mall, my entire family spent the day at my daughter's house. The Rose family, along with her brother Brian and his family, as well as Grandpa, me, spent the day decorating the house. Candles and wreaths were lit in every window, lights were strung on the bushes surrounding the front yard, and Christmas trinkets were scattered throughout every room on the first floor of the house. We all agreed that the nativity scene would be in Rose's family room. We decorated 2 large 12-foot trees outside and set up a table covered with straw between them. 3 rows of flowers served as a protective barrier in front of the table, and 24 of Martha's Christmas pictures were laid out on the table. Before leaving for the evening, I took one last look at the figurines. Brian and Rose joined me. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I remembered Martha many years ago, how she stood in front of the nativity scene, crying and saying that it was her happy place.